originally due at UFC 287, the day of the fight, it was announced that out is Chase Sherman. The short notice opponent, Karl Williams, was able to make the walk. It was originally supposed to be Sherman versus Barnett, but now they pushed it out to here. So from UFC 287 to Charlotte, North Carolina, a big-time fight between a couple of guys who are now based on the East Coast. It's Williams versus Sherman. Let's get into it. Matt, it's a really weird matchup because if you consider for Karl Williams, I did listen to an interview that he had done with, try and guess who did the interview with him.
Either JHK or James Lynch.
It was JHK before his fight against Łukasz Treski, and in that
Two
one,
of our favorites,
Karl Williams talked about the fact that he was able to build himself up to heavyweight the right way. He was able to put on muscle mass. He was able to increase his bone density with the help of the UFC PI. And out of all of that, it seems like heavyweight is the future. And he weighed 233 against Jimmy Lawson on Dana White's Contender Series. Took that fight on incredibly short notice. Jimmy Lawson, Penn State product, one of the best pure wrestlers you're going to find out there in the heavies. And Karl Williams took him down 3 times and totally dominated. Almost 11 minutes control time in that fight. So Williams goes out there, takes on Treski, and in that one, does the exact same thing, and even drops Treski in that fight. So for Williams, the scary thing is, halfway through the second round, there was like a point where Herb Dean had to check his glove, and then he put his hands on his knees, and Daniel Cormier was like, his hands on his knees, he's tired! And Williams gets back up.
And then he 10-8'd him in the third round.
He did a Patrick Roy, and he kind of put his hands up like, I want out of here. But for Karl Williams, a big one there against Treski. That fight, 3 weeks ago. So now he's taking this fight on really short notice. Williams kind of switched things up. He's an ATT Atlanta adjacent guy. He's trained with the Lima brothers. Diego Lima, somebody out there that's listening to this, I need to put this out into the world. I've searched Diego Lima Creed 3, I don't know how many times, on how many social media platforms. If you watch the part where Creed's getting ready for the fight against his friend, you look at the training montages. Diego Lima is the guy holding the pads. He's the guy in the corner. So Diego Lima, I'm pretty sure he's in that, but he doesn't have social media anymore. So
Wait, you've seen the third. Is it good, first of all?
Yeah, there's a lot of weird parts about that fight. We can get into it, but
I really like the first two Creed.
In the matchup, Matt, Karl Williams, very, very good with his wrestling. But the reason I bring up the weight is the fact that in his amateur days, he went 5-1 from 2019 to 2020. He was 3 at light heavyweight, 3 at heavyweight as a pro, 6 of 9 fights at light heavyweight. So I do like the move up to heavyweight for him. He was a part of the 2022 PFL Challenger Series, as was Yanal Ashmoz, and both guys able to pick up wins in their respective UFC debuts. So Karl Williams comes into this one, I assume, in the last 3 weeks, that he's been training at ATT Atlanta. But for his last one, a lot of time spent at Extreme Tour with a lot of those big boys. And I would think training with guys like Sergey Spivak, they're probably going to get you ready for a matchup like this, or Ngannou, or whoever it is. But for Chase Sherman, he was getting ready for Beast Boy, a guy that's going to strike on the outside, that's going to rally back like he did his last time out against Jake Collier. Sherman's had the weirdest 3 runs in the UFC, and now he's looking for the first win since that time against Jared Vanderaa. He's 1-4 in his last 5 UFC contests.
This is my big issue with this fight, and I'm not saying this to poke fun at Chase Sherman or anything like that, but Chase Sherman excels when he's fighting a primary striker. I think we can both agree to that. He's going to make the fight very fun. He has surprising output for a heavyweight. Like, he doesn't get tired in the third round. This guy will throw a lot.
About a third of his strikes are leg kicks, too.
Exactly. And that's the thing about Chase Sherman. He's an active guy who will throw in combination, throw kicks and whatnot. But the thing is, even when he's fighting a primary striker, do we tend to pick Chase Sherman in these matchups? Like, guys who are going to give him a lot of moments in the thing he's really good at. You haven't answered me yet, so I don't love the answer. That's my whole issue. Like, with Chase Sherman, if he's going to go out there and fight a guy like Chris Barnett, I can give you an in-depth breakdown as to, hey, Barnett's going to throw some big actions. He might not be the most active guy in the in-betweens, and that's going to give a guy like Chase Sherman a lot of opportunities to win that fight.
Now, I picked Sherman his last time out against Cortez Acosta because Cortez Acosta struggled so bad against leg kicks to Jared Vanderaa. I thought Vanderaa won the fight. I thought Chase Sherman won the fight. But the weirdest part about that fight is Chase Sherman couldn't figure out the movement, had less output than normal, threw less kicks than normal, and this is another camp out of Killcliff FC like his last one.
And Karl Williams is going to put those question marks into your mind as to, hey, when is it safe to throw my strikes? When can I not and try to defend the takedown? Because Williams is a guy who, when he gets in on the takedown, he's going to chain wrestle. He's not just going to let go of it, let you be, and then, okay, now we're going to restart. So Sherman is a heavyweight who moves very well. I think we both would agree on that. He has good footwork, but he damn well better have good footwork if he's fighting Karl Williams, because Williams has shown power in some of his previous fights, but I don't think he's going to go into this fight trying to brawl with a guy like Sherman, because that leaves the window open for Sherman to win this fight. If Williams just goes in there and wrestle, and I know that's an easier said than done type of a game plan, because Sherman's going to throw a lot of damaging strikes. Again, the movement is going to help this takedown defense. I still don't know what Sherman's going to be able to do outside of the brawling to help him win this fight.
If you look at it for Karl Williams, and we continue to talk about how good his MMA wrestling is, because it has been ex-MMA, UFC, Contender Series, PFL. If you look at it for Williams, what's his base? Like Sam Hughes, it's track and field at South Carolina State. So I'll throw the picture up there for that one.
But he's 6'3" and weighs 240. Like, you shouldn't be able to run that far.
And he looked kind of tired his last time out. But again,
he looked good as the fight went on. Again, the wrestling is so dominant that if he gets that top position, if you can't get back up to your feet, you are going to be just as spent as he is.
It really is weird. So again, for Sherman, by the numbers last time out against Cortez Acosta, significant strikes, 147 to 66. He was able to land 25 leg kicks in that one. He had 33 against Parker Porter and 25 against Andrei Arlovski. He's able to get those numbers up. The takedown defense actually throughout the UFC run, and the UFC run for Chase Sherman, 2-5 the first time, 1-3 the second time. Then he asked for his release. He was going to go back. He was the 2019 BKFC Police Gazette heavyweight champ. He wanted to go back and compete for those belts, but he ended up getting signed back in the UFC, 1-2 in this recent stint. But if you consider it, he's been taken down by Romanov, Collier out of that weird one where he submitted him, Porter, Sakai, and Willis. Big pretty go home. It's been a long time since then. All right, so now all of a sudden it goes from Chase Sherman was supposed to fight a striker and Chris Barnett to then fighting Karl Williams on short notice. Now both of these guys get a little bit of an impromptu camp for this fight. So Sherman out of Killcliff, Karl Williams bipping, bopping, booping, hanging out at a couple of different gyms, but we've seen him train out of Extreme Couture as well as ATT Atlanta.
I would love to see you ask a question. Chase, have you been bipping, bopping, and booping?
Well, I meant that about Karl Williams switching the camps. But Chase Sherman has as well. Like, he used to train out of D'Iberville back home in Mississippi. Then he went over to Elevation, and he's kind of found a home at Killcliff recently. But when you look at a matchup like this, Karl Williams is a big favorite in the fight. He was even favored quite a bit when he took it on about 4 days' notice. When we have a look at the Topology votes, Matt, surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 80% Williams.
I think it'll be over.
And it's way over. 595 total votes, 95% Williams, 53% by decision, 39% by knockout. Really, the story of the fight, we kind of touched on it earlier, is can Karl Williams initiate the takedown, and can Chase Sherman defend the takedown? And if it's on the feet, Karl Williams has a lot of big action strikes, but if you look at a guy like Chase Sherman, a tidy 1-2 and a leg kick can carry you pretty far. I know it's carried Chase Sherman to, a 4-10 record in the UFC. But realistically, if you look at it like this for a guy in Chase Sherman, if you can keep the fight standing, he can have a ton of success in the matchup.
What have we always said about Sherman? If you're a pure striker, he's going to make the fight very entertaining, right? He might not win them all, but it's going to be a really entertaining fight. The problem is, if Karl Williams is able to grapple to the level that we have seen him grapple before he came to the UFC, it's going to be a difficult fight for Sherman to try to keep this on his feet and then have those success. I agree with you, though. If Williams is winging on a lot of his shots, Sherman is the picture of composure on the feet. He can stay in the pocket. He can land clean shots. I like the elbows, too, if he is able to keep it in the clinch. Those are very tricky on the inside. He could be able to hit Williams with some good ones. The problem is, if Williams, who I did favor the first time around, just has a longer camp, and if his cardio is even a little bit better, then I do have to favor him in the matchup.
Both of us going with Karl Williams representing the U.S. Virgin Islands to get the win in the matchup. Let us know down below if you have the Gift King of 2017, the Vanilla Gorilla Chase Sherman, or if you're going with Williams in the matchup. Some big-time fights in this card. Same division represented in the main event. We're talking about Almeida moving up in the rankings to take on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.